Hello. Today we will discuss the concepts of the job costing. Job costing is particularly related to the costing of a particular job. When a company takes up a job, right, which may be order based, right? So how to do the costing of that particular job? How to calculate what elements we should take? Now, first is that what are the building blocks of the costing system? The first is that we need to understand that there should be a cost object, right? Then we need to assign that what are the direct costs of a cost object and what are the indirect costs associated with a cost object, right? Uh, while doing so, the direct costs, right? We we trace to the cost object, and indirect costs we allocate to the cost object. These things we already discussed in our overhead costing, right? Chapters. Now, for that we need to create a cost pool and a cost allocation base, right? Now, what are the differences between job costing? So, how it works? It works like this, that suppose there is a job, right? There is a job. Now, I need to uh, calculate the cost of this job. So, for example, this job can be manufacturing a boiler, right, which is order based. So, the company got an order for manufacturing a boiler. So, what we will do, we will try to associate what are the direct costs, right, and then what are the indirect costs, right. This direct costs and indirect costs, we will direct cost we will try to trace with the job directly, and indirect costs or overheads, right. This is also called overhead, we will try to allocate to the job directly, to the job. Now, if we add these two, right, we will get the job which is we will if we add this to the direct costs and the indirect costs, then we will get the total cost associated with a particular job. Now, what is the difference between job costing and process costing system? Okay. Now, what is the distinction between the job costing and the process costing? So, in the job costing system, there are distinct units of a product or service. As I gave an example, that each boiler is distinct, their specifications are distinct, right? In process costing system, the uh, there are masses of identical and similar units of products. So, for we can okay, what are the okay, what are the distinction between the job costing and the process costing system? In the job costing system, the units are distinct, right? For example, a company, right, say VEL, Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited, they can get order for manufacturing of boilers, right? So, for each company, the requirement, the specification of boilers, the end use of the boilers may be different, and the VEL can make it on job order basis, right? So, in such a case, they have to follow for calculating the cost of each boiler. What they have to do is they have to follow the job costing system, right? But process costing system is followed where the masses of identical or similar units of a product or service is been followed. So, like for example, a common example is the paints, right? So, say Asian Paints Limited. So, when they have to calculate the cost of paint per liter, right? So, they need to do this. Similarly, for in case of refineries, right, in case of refineries like Indian Oil Limited. So, this needs to be done. So, this process costing system and job costing system, it depends upon the nature of manufacturing process, the nature of the finished product, etc. So, there is a 7-step approach to job costing. In this session, we will particularly discuss about the job costing system. The process costing system we will discuss in a forthcoming session. So, what are the 7-step approach? The step 1 is identify the chosen cost object, right. So, in our example, if I want to calculate the total cost of a boiler, so I need to choose that, right, that what is the object for which I want to calculate the total job cost. Then I need to identify the direct costs, right, associated with the job, right. And then this direct costs we will allocate, right. We have to identify, select the cost allocation basis, right. Now, for the job, some costs will be direct, but there will be some costs which are indirect in nature. This we need to identify, right. So, like for example, what could be the example of direct cost? Say material, direct material can be the example of the direct cost, right. What could be the example of indirect cost? Say uh, uh, power used for running the machinery, where the machine is used for several other jobs also, right, not a particularly one job, but many other jobs are also performed through a machine, and power, electricity, power is used for running the machine. In such a case, this cost of power will be indirect cost. Then the compute the rate per unit, right, compute the indirect costs, and then at the end add the direct cost and the indirect cost, and you will get the total cost for the job. So, these are the 7 steps need to be followed. So, general approach, we can see an example. A manufacturing company is planning to sell a batch of 25 special machines, right. So, it has a name, say job 650, and to a retailer for 114,800. So, this is the selling price, right, selling price of a particular special machine which is not produced in mass, right, but it is some kind of special job, specially manufactured for a particular customer, right. And the company fixed the selling price at 1,14,800 rupees. So, what is the first step? First step is we determine the cost object. So, the cost object here is the job 650, right. This is the cost object. What is step 2? So, direct costs, right, we have identified that which direct costs will be we can directly assign to the job. So, there the direct material we found it is of 50,000 and manufacturing direct labor is 19,000, right. So, these are the 2 items. The cost allocation base is machine hours, right. Job 650 used 500 machine hours, right, and 2,480 machine hours were used by all jobs. So, this is the total machine hour, right, but particularly this job is using 500 machine hours. Now, step 4, what are the indirect costs? Overhead cost means indirect cost. Indirect cost is rupees 65,100. So, this is the indirect cost or overhead incurred for this particular job. Now, actual indirect cost rate is how much then? 65,400 divided by 2,480, right? That is 26.25 per machine hour, right? So, this is the absorption rate of the overhead, right? So, step 6, right? So, per hour rate is absorption rate is 26.25, and we have seen earlier that it uses this job uses 500 hours. So, total indirect cost is rupees 13,125, right? Now I can add the direct cost as well as the indirect cost to arrive at the total. So 50,000 already given, that is material cost. Direct labor 19,000, this is the direct cost, and overhead allocation we have done 13,125. If we add this, then the total is coming rupees 82,125. So this is my cost. Okay, fine. Now what is the gross margin? So I need to know that what is the margin, what is the profitability I am making out of this job. So my revenue is what? Revenue, it is decided by the company, that is 1,14,800, and cost of goods sold is 82,125. So if I subtract, right, I am subtracting it. So I am getting the gross margin at rupees 32,675. Right. What is the gross margin percentage? So for percentage, I can calculate like this: 32,625 coming from here divided by the revenue coming from here. So it is coming to 28.5%. So these are the steps for general steps for the job costing. So what we need to do, we need to identify the direct costs associated with the job, right? We need to identify the total overhead, and then we need to find out some basis for allocation, like in this case it is the machine hour, and then we need to assign the overhead to it, the indirect cost to it. Then I will add the direct cost with the indirect cost and I will get the total cost. If I deduct this total cost from the revenue, I will get the gross margin gross margin, and if this gross margin I divide by the total revenue, I will get the gross margin percentage, right? Now, from where I can get this information in a company, right? So I need some source documents for that. First source document is job cost record, right? Second one is materials requisition record, and third one is labor time record, right? So job cost record is and in one document I will record that whatever material, labor, and other expenses, direct expenses which has been incurred for the job, for executing the job, right? Whatever material is requisitioned from the store, so I should have a record. And when the labor I am the labor who is working on the job, right, how much time they are using, right? Because it is not an assembly line production, each job has specific requirement, right, from the point of view of material, from the point of view of labor and other expenses also. So now, how to distinguish between actual costing and normal costing? So actual costing is a system that uses actual cost to determine the cost of individual jobs. So I need to record all the actual costs for this to determine the cost of individual jobs. It allocates indirect costs based on the actual direct cost rate times the actual quantity of the cost allocation base, right? So direct costs it calculate actually. For the indirect cost, it is based on the actual direct cost rate times the actual quantity of the cost allocation base, right? So like in our earlier example, the allocation base was machine hour. So in some cases it may be labor hour also, right? So we need to find out that what is the most suitable cost allocation base, right? So normal costing is a method that allocates the indirect cost based on budgeted indirect cost rates. So this word is important, budgeted indirect cost rates times the actual quantity of cost allocation base, actual quantity of the cost allocation base.